Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today, we're really cutting through the noise. We've got this stack of source material focusing on, well, foundational leadership, spiritual discipline, and the pretty dramatic process of choosing that original inner circle.
That's right. We're looking at reflections and readings tied to the story of the apostles, specifically around the feast of St. Simon and Jude.
Okay. And what this gives us, this collection, it's a fascinating mix, isn't it? Practical guidance, but also some really high-level theological architecture.
Exactly. We don't just see who the foundational team was, but also the surprisingly rigorous and intentional process used to actually pick them.
Absolutely. So here's the mission for you, the listener. We want to pull out the key lessons here. First, what's the gold standard for making these huge decisions? Second, what was the blueprint, the structure these leaders were meant to build? And third, let's say the complicated reality of the actual humans chosen for this, supposedly perfect foundation.
And it starts with an act that honestly feels almost impossible today.
Right. Where do we begin? What's the precedent set for discernment?
Well, if you're looking for a lesson in, say, prioritizing before a critical decision, business, life, team building, whatever, this is it. The sources point to the ultimate example of spiritual discipline right before the 12 apostles were chosen.
Walk us through that moment. What does the source material say the leader did before picking the team?
It's right there in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, verse 12. Before naming anyone, Jesus went up to a mountain to pray, and he spent the entire night praying to God.
The entire night.
Yeah. This wasn't, a quick chat. It was exhaustive, high-stakes preparation. And when you think about the decision, choosing the human foundation for something meant to last millennia, well, the discipline kind of matches the gravity, doesn't it?
I think we gloss over the physicality of that sometimes. Why a mountain? Why all night? It feels like this deliberate removal from all distractions.
Waiting out the noise.
Yeah, prioritizing the spiritual over even the basic need for sleep. It really sets a benchmark that true discernment demands, radical effort.
Precisely. That discipline is the prerequisite. And the related reflection theme we have, discernment and devotion, it links this act directly to the source of wisdom. The argument is that real discernment only comes from that committed time spent seeking alignment.
So if the decision is foundational,
the preparation has to be total. That's the idea.
Okay, but what assurance does that kind of preparation give? Does the source material say that intense discipline guarantees, a perfect outcome, smooth sailing?
It guarantees alignment, which is maybe a bit different. The sources bring in Psalm 37, verse 5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will act.
Okay.
So the promise isn't that the path will be easy. It's more that by aligning your intense, devoted decision-making with a higher purpose, you get equipped for the mission. You get the courage and love needed.
So it's about trust triggering the action.
Exactly. Trust is the trigger. It really emphasizes that connection between deep internal discipline and confident external execution.
Okay, so the discipline was radical. The resulting structure, then, must have matched that intensity. Let's shift from the process of choosing to the role these men were meant to fill. After that night of prayer, the choice is made. What were the structural implications?
Oh, they were huge.
Wow.
And defined immediately, very powerfully. In that first reading from Ephesians, it introduces this colossal architectural metaphor.
Right, the passage defining the new status for believers, it says they're no longer strangers and sojourners.
And that distinction, strangers and sojourners, that's a massive social and legal shift in that world.
How so?
Well, being a stranger or sojourner meant you had no rights, really. No inheritance, no permanent place. You were an outsider, always.
Okay.
But the text flips that entirely. Believers become fellow citizens with the holy ones and members of the household of God.
Wow. So from no standing to full citizenship, inheritance rights within this divine structure.
Exactly. And this leads right to the core architectural point, defining the apostles' role. The source says this whole structure is built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets.
With Christ Jesus himself as the capstone. I remember that line.
Right. And think about that imagery. A capstone, it's the final topstone, usually in an arch, right? It locks everything else in place, gives the whole thing strength, permanence.
So Christ is the ultimate piece holding it together.
He's the keystone, the structural integrity, but the apostles and prophets, they're the literal ground layer. The load-bearing foundation everything else rests on. They're that critical initial layer of permanence.
It really changes the idea of the church from maybe, a temporary gathering.
Into something stable, fixed, designed for Well, eternal use.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The passage says through this foundation, the whole structure is held together and grows into a temple sacred in the Lord. It becomes a dwelling place of God in the Spirit.
Not just a tent, then.
No, not a transient tent or tabernacle. This was designed as a load-bearing permanent temple, built to divine standards, you could say.
Okay, so given that huge structural expectation, a sacred universal temple, the message these men carried must have had an equally vast scope.
That's where the responsorial psalm comes in, Psalm 19. It describes the influence of their message as, well, overwhelming, almost cosmic in its reach.
Cosmic? How so?
The language is just majestic. It suggests this unstoppable global reach for the message that's supported by this foundation. The psalm declares, their message goes out through all the earth.
And it repeats the point, doesn't it, to make sure we get the universality?
It hammers it home. Ensures we understand this isn't just for one tribe, one place. It emphasizes the scope. Through all the earth, their voice resounds, and to the ends of the world, their message.
So the foundation provides the stability.
For a universal pronouncement, yeah. The sources really connect the dots.
Yeah.
Rigorous selection, robust structure, and this unlimited scope for the mission.
Okay, now here's where, for me, it gets really complicated and honestly pretty fascinating. We have the perfect discipline, that all-night prayer.
Right.
We have the perfect blueprint, the sacred temple, locked by the capstone. Now, let's look at the actual human beings chosen for this flawless foundation. This is detailed right after the prayer in Luke 6. Who actually made the cut?
Okay, so when day came, Jesus calls his disciples, chooses the 12, names them apostles. And this is where, like you said, theory meets the messy reality of human complexity.
How does the list start?
Starts simply enough. Simon, who he named Peter, and his brother Andrew, then James and John, okay? Then Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus. Pretty standard so far.
But the list takes a sharp turn, doesn't it? It starts revealing some, let's say, internal conflicts that seem to clash with the idea of a perfectly unified foundation.
It gets extremely complicated. The list continues with Simon, who is called a zealot.
Okay, pause there. Simon the Zealot. That's a huge political statement right there, isn't it? Zealots were what? Radical activists?
Radicals, yeah. Focused on often violent revolution against the Roman occupation. Hardline, anti-establishment revolutionaries.
Committed to driving the Romans out by force.
If necessary, yes. That was the platform.
And who did Jesus put right next to him on this foundational team, effectively?
Matthew, who, as a tax collector,
was seen by his own people as a collaborator, working with the Romans, the very regime the Zealot wanted to destroy.
Exactly. So this isn't just diversity. This feels like institutionalizing radical, maybe even violent political opposition within the core team.
It's a recipe for friction, distrust, volatility, right from the start.
That's the crucial insight, I think. If the point of the all-night prayer was to get the best, most unified team, well, the resulting roster is kind of shocking.
It seems Jesus deliberately chose people representing these irreconcilable extremes, political, social, economic.
Suggesting the purpose might have been inclusion and maybe radical contradiction, not just conformity.
And then there's the ultimate complication, Judas Iscariot.
Right. And the source material doesn't just list his name. It explicitly adds the outcome, who became a traitor.
That tag is attached within the list of the chosen, right after the night of prayer.
And this might be the most profound detail about discernment in the whole text. It confirms that even the most intensely prayerful, divinely guided choice, it doesn't guarantee an absence of failure or betrayal.
So Jesus chose the team knowing, or maybe anticipating, the instability, the complication.
It seems the selection was perfect in its composition, despite, or maybe even because of, its future potential for failure. The complexity was part of the design.
Okay, that is the ultimate so what context for us, for you, the listener. If the foundation of this dwelling place of God could contain political enemies and the seed of betrayal.
It validates the complexity, the struggle within any high-stakes human endeavor, even one guided by divine choice initially.
It's a massive dose of reality.
It is, and it's maybe reassuring. Seeking guidance doesn't mean your life or your team will be magically immune to human messiness.
But the foundation
established through that discipline is strong enough to withstand the inevitable complication, the conflicts, even the catastrophic failures that might come up.
So, wrapping this up, what does it all mean for you, the listener, the learner, the decision maker? We've kind of navigated these three key takeaways, haven't we?
I think so. First, that disciplined process, the rigorous preparation for seeking divine will.
Right, the night of prayer.
Yeah.
Then the robust architectural vision, that foundation of apostles, prophets, with Christ as the capstone.
Hmm. And third, the astonishingly complicated, very human roster chosen for that universal mission.
Yeah.
And our sources, they blend this high-level theological structure with a really relatable lesson in, I guess, management, personal choice.
Seems like it.
The core message really echoes that psalm again. Commit your way to the Lord, trust him, and he will act. The action is still ours to take.
But the trust is the framework.
Exactly. It allows us to move forward even when the roster we choose or the situation we face looks complicated or includes people or elements that seem contradictory.
Okay. So we want to leave you with a final thought. Grounded in that intense all-night discipline Jesus showed before the selection.
Right. The question isn't just about praying. It's about the rigor of the process.
So we ask you, what foundational decision, personal, professional, spiritual, are you facing right now that maybe requires that level of radical, undistracted discipline and trust before you make the final choice?
Take that idea of intentional, high-stakes preparation with you today.